Bernie Sanders went on Fox News and participated in a town hall event there. I think that's definitely a good idea. It totally makes sense to try to reach out a broader swath of the electorate, get your message out to maybe voters and an audience that usually doesn't get to hear from you in the long form, and maybe just some of the snippets taken out of context that Fox News would like to use as paint Bernie as some Marxist socialist Leninist who all the stupid rhetoric and propaganda that Fox News likes to use to demonize policies and positions that actually help and benefit the working people. So it's definitely a good idea. I definitely agree with the strategy of going on Fox News. So he went on there, and one of the things that Bernie ended up doing, which I think is really good, and which is actually some advice that Kyle Kalinske of Secular Talk has been making recently on some of his videos, and that's the idea that Bernie Sanders needs to make the case that he is in fact the moderate, he is the centrist, he is the level-headed thinker when it comes to the policies that he supports, and to paint Joe Biden as the actual candidate who's a radical or an extremist. And Bernie Sanders started to adopt this messaging to a certain extent at this town hall, because he was talking about Medicare for all, and then he was pointing it back to the audience there. Do you think that's a radical idea, to have everybody be covered by a single payer health insurance plan? And the crowd was like, no, that's not radical. And then he talks about free college. Do you think we should make college in this country tuition free, so people aren't just shackled and saddled with all the student debt? And then he is that radical? He poses that to the audience there at the town hall. They say no. And then the third issue, he talks about how the minimum wage has been at $7.25 for $10 an hour. I want to raise it to $15 an hour, a living wage, so people aren't just continuing to just struggle and suffer from these really paltry and meager wages. Is that a radical idea? He asks the audience, and then they say no. So he needs to keep really hammering on that point, how he is the moderate, he's the reasonable, he's the rational one. He's not this extreme radical. He's more in the lines of a FDR, and it's extreme what Joe Biden supports and advocates for. His health insurance plan leaves 10 million people uninsured on the wealthiest country on the face of the earth. I think that's pretty radical, that people would be dying and still going bankrupt under Joe Biden's medical plan. I think it's, pretty radical that Joe Biden doesn't support tuition-free public college. So I think it's pretty radical that Joe Biden is okay with, millions of people still being shackled with student loan debt. They're not able to, pay it off, so they're not able to start families, to start businesses, to save up for retirement, to take vacations, to, do all of these things. That's radical. He needs to really be hammering away on that. How, again, on things like, the environment, I think it's pretty radical that Joe Biden doesn't support a Green New Deal when the climate crisis and climate change is, again, an existential threat facing our world and the human species. And if we don't take it seriously, then we're not going to be on this planet very much longer. I think that's pretty radical that Joe Biden doesn't support this very level-headed policy prescriptions that are provided by the Green New Deal to continue life on this planet. I think that's pretty radical that Joe Biden is okay with the human species going extinct because he takes money from, the fossil fuel industries or whatever. So it's definitely a really good point to be made. We want to have a more broad-based appeal to the electorate and focus less on, being this is part of the revolution, or I'm a social democrat, which obviously he is, but we really need to be hammering away at the voters who aren't as susceptible to, that messaging that Bernie has been moving. We need to expand it to, a wider variety of voters to expand Bernie's support, because unfortunately the young vote just hasn't materialized as much as we have liked for Bernie at this point. But then again, we got to look at things like, forms of voter suppression, people having to wait in line for hours on end to vote, and all these other things. But I think a change in messaging, like Kyle Kulinski has advocated and that Bernie was exhibiting to a certain extent in this Fox News town hall, are definitely going in the right direction. He can just really position himself as an extension of FDR, bringing things actually back to normal, so it works for the working people in the United States. And so it's just again, Bernie's the moderate, he's the rational one, he's actually the centrist. All of his policies pretty much are supported by a majority of people within the United States. And Joe Biden's the radical one for not supporting Medicare for all, when 16 out of 16 of the first primary and caucus states here in the U.S., the exit polls clearly showed that a majority of people in the U.S. support Medicare for all, a living wage, legalizing weed, which Joe Biden also doesn't support, free college, canceling student loan debt, ending the wars. All of these things, those are the moderate or centrist position because a majority of the population supports them. Joe Biden is the radical, nut job. We need to be making that message, and Bernie really needs to be hitting him over the head with that and the electability argument. So pretty interesting. And there's Clarence. I would love to hear your thoughts in the comment sections down below. Peace. Much love.